While liberalism, conservatism, and socialism form the backbone of modern political ideology, they do not exhaust the ideological landscape. A number of minor ideologies have emerged alongside, against, or within the major traditions. These ideologies are termed minor, not because they are insignificant, but because they are less comprehensive. They typically focus on a particular dimension of political life rather than offering a full theory of politics, economics, and society. Importantly, minor ideologies often attach themselves to major ideologies, borrowing assumptions about the state, the economy, or human nature, while radically reinterpreting one central value, such as authority, identity, gender, or the environment. Anarchism. Anarchism is the most radical critique of political authority in modern political thought. At its core, anarchism holds that all forms of coercive authority are illegitimate, including the state itself. Unlike liberalism, which seeks to limit government, or socialism, which seeks to redirect state power, anarchism seeks to abolish it altogether. Anarchists argue that the state is inherently violent and oppressive, regardless of who controls it. Laws, borders, prisons, and standing armies are seen not as neutral instruments, but as mechanisms that enforce domination. From this perspective, even democratic states remain unjust because they rely on coercion rather than genuine consent. Anarchism has appeared in multiple forms. Individualist anarchists emphasize personal autonomy and voluntary exchange, often aligning with radical interpretations of liberalism. Collectivist and anarcho-communist traditions, influenced by socialist critiques of capitalism, argue that hierarchy and private property are inseparable and must be dismantled together. Thinkers such as Mikhail Bakunin and Peter Kropotkin argued that cooperation and mutual aid, not authority, are the natural basis of social order. Despite its rejection of the state, anarchism does not imply chaos. Anarchists envision horizontal organization, voluntary associations, and local self-governance. Historically, anarchism has influenced labor movements, anti-colonial struggles, and contemporary activist networks, even when it has failed to establish durable political systems. Nationalism. Nationalism is among the most powerful and ambiguous political ideologies. At its core, nationalism asserts that the nation, defined by shared culture, language, history, or identity, should be the primary unit of political loyalty. Unlike liberalism or socialism, nationalism does not specify a clear economic model or theory of rights. Instead, it functions as a mobilizing ideology, capable of attaching itself to multiple political traditions. One can therefore speak of liberal nationalism, conservative nationalism, socialist nationalism, and anti-colonial nationalism. In its liberal form, nationalism emphasizes self-determination and popular sovereignty, the idea that a people should govern themselves rather than be ruled by foreign powers. This version played a central role in the formation of modern nation-states during the 18th and 19th centuries. In its conservative form, nationalism stresses tradition, cultural continuity, and social cohesion, often resisting immigration or multiculturalism. In socialist and anti-colonial contexts, nationalism has been a tool for resisting imperial domination and reclaiming political autonomy. The danger of nationalism lies in its potential to slide into exclusionary or ethnic definitions of belonging. When the nation is defined narrowly by race, religion, or blood, it can justify discrimination, repression, and violence against those deemed outsiders. Nationalism, therefore, is best understood as ideologically plastic. It can support democratic liberation or authoritarian domination depending on how it is articulated. Fascism represents one of the most extreme and destructive political ideologies of the modern era. It is best understood not merely as authoritarianism, but as a totalizing ideology that seeks to fuse the state, the nation, and the individual into a single political will. Fascism rejects the core assumptions of liberalism, socialism, and conservatism alike. It denies individual rights, dismisses class equality, and rejects constitutional limits on power. Instead, it glorifies authority, hierarchy, militarism, and national rebirth. Historically associated with regimes such as Mussolini's Italy and Hitler's Germany, fascism is characterized by several recurring features: a cult of leadership, mass mobilization, suppression of dissent, glorification of violence, and the belief that society must be unified through struggle against internal and external enemies. Unlike conservatism, which values tradition, fascism is revolutionary in its own way. It seeks to destroy existing institutions and rebuild society through force. Unlike socialism, it rejects equality and instead celebrates inequality as natural and desirable. Fascism's appeal often arises during periods of economic crisis, social fragmentation, and perceived national humiliation. In contemporary politics, explicit fascism is rare, but fascistic tendencies, such as demonization of minorities, attacks on democratic institutions, and personalization of power, remain an ongoing concern in political analysis. Feminism. Feminism is a political ideology centered on the claim that gender-based inequality is systemic, not accidental, and that political, social, and economic institutions have historically privileged men at the expense of women and gender minorities. Feminism challenges the traditional separation between the public and private spheres, arguing that family structures, cultural norms, and personal relationships are deeply political. The famous feminist insight that the personal is political captures this core claim. Like nationalism, feminism exists in multiple forms. Liberal feminism seeks equal legal rights and opportunities within existing institutions. Socialist feminism links gender oppression to capitalism and class exploitation. Radical feminism argues that patriarchy is the most fundamental form of domination, predating class and state systems. Feminism does not necessarily reject the state, rather it interrogates how law, policy, and culture reinforce gender hierarchies. Feminist movements have profoundly reshaped modern politics by influencing labor law, voting rights, education, healthcare, and family policy. Importantly, feminism also raises methodological challenges to political theory itself, questioning whose experiences have historically been treated as universal and whose have been excluded from political consideration. Green ideology, environmentalism. Green ideology is the most recent of the minor ideologies and responds to a problem largely ignored by classical political thought: ecological limits. Green political theory argues that traditional ideologies, whether liberal, conservative, or socialist, have treated nature as an infinite resource rather than a fragile system. At its core, green ideology asserts that political and economic systems must be reorganized around sustainability, environmental protection, and intergenerational justice. This involves questioning economic growth as an unquestioned good and rethinking human relationships with the natural world. Some strands of green ideology align with liberalism, emphasizing regulation, market incentives, and technological innovation. Others align with socialism, advocating collective ownership of natural resources and strong environmental planning. More radical forms of green thought challenge industrial civilization itself, arguing for deep ecological transformation. Green ideology expands the moral community beyond present citizens to include future generations and non-human life, fundamentally reshaping how responsibility and justice are understood in politics. Concluding perspective. Minor ideologies are best understood as correctives, amplifiers, or critics of the major traditions. They draw attention to dimensions of political life, authority, identity, gender, ecology that cannot be fully explained by liberalism, conservatism, or socialism alone. In practice, modern political movements almost always represent hybrid ideological formations, combining elements from major and minor ideologies. A sophisticated understanding of politics therefore requires recognizing how these minor ideologies interact with, reshape, and sometimes destabilize the dominant ideological frameworks.